Have you ever wondered why some people seem to captivate a room without even trying? They don't necessarily have the sharpest jawline, the most sculpted body, or the trendiest clothes. Yet somehow, people lean in when they speak, they feel lighter in their presence, and they remember them long after the conversation ends. It's not their face that draws others in, it's their mind, their energy, their way of thinking. What you're sensing in those moments isn't physical attraction, it's mental and emotional magnetism. The quiet pull of an attractive brain. Science tells us that physical beauty might capture attention for a few seconds, but psychological beauty, empathy, awareness, curiosity, that's what holds it. In fact, a recent study found that after 3 meaningful conversations, people rate emotional intelligence and calm presence as twice as attractive as looks. Think about that. Your ability to understand, listen, and be grounded might be more magnetic than anything you could ever wear. An attractive brain isn't about IQ or how many books you've read. It's about how your mind moves, how it balances logic with empathy, how it seeks growth instead of drama, how it stays kind in the middle of chaos. It's the mind that doesn't chase attention because it radiates intention. You see, real attractiveness begins in the invisible. How you treat others when no one's watching, how you speak to yourself when you're alone, and how you respond when life tests your peace. Modern psychology calls this social resonance. Our brains naturally mirror the emotions of those around us. When someone with an emotionally stable, compassionate mind enters the room, your brain feels it before your logic catches up. It's the same reason calm people soothe us, while anxious or negative energy makes us uneasy. Attraction is energy recognition at the neural level. But here's what most people miss. Many of the most attractive minds don't even realize they're attractive, because they're too busy reflecting, growing, healing, not performing. They think their quietness makes them invisible, their sensitivity makes them weak, their solitude makes them strange. But those are the exact traits that make them magnetic. The world is drawn to people who can stay kind in chaos, curious in confusion, and grounded in noise. And maybe that's you. Maybe you've always been the listener, the one people turn to when they're lost. Maybe you're the one who notices small details others miss, who feels deeply but struggles to explain it. You might not see it yet, but that's the signature of an attractive brain. The kind that connects beyond appearance, beyond words, beyond surface impressions. So in this journey, I want to show you 7 signs that reveal the beauty of your mind. Signs you might have overlooked because you've been taught to measure yourself by how you look, not how you think, feel, and uplift others. By the end of this video, you'll not only recognize these signs in yourself, but know how to strengthen them, so your energy naturally attracts the right people, the right peace, and the right kind of love. Because the truth is, attraction begins long before eyes meet. It begins in the energy your thoughts create. And if you learn to nurture that, you'll never have to chase connection. It will find you. Your mind is already beautiful. You just need to start seeing it that way. Have you ever noticed how deeply we remember the people who truly see us? Not the ones who nod while waiting to speak, but the ones who actually listen, who make us feel understood without needing to fix or impress us. That right there is one of the most powerful signs of an attractive brain, the ability to make others feel safe, seen, and valued. We live in a time where everyone is talking, but very few are truly listening. And yet, when someone genuinely listens, Something incredible happens inside the human brain. Neuroscientists call it the mirror neuron effect. When we feel heard, our brain releases oxytocin, the same hormone that creates trust and bonding. It's the chemistry of connection. This is why you feel a strange warmth when someone listens to you without interrupting, judging, or rushing to reply. That person isn't just present in body, they're present in energy. And that presence is magnetic. People often underestimate how rare this quality is. Most conversations today are not about understanding, they're about waiting for our turn to speak, to defend, to prove. But when you shift from waiting to listening, everything changes. The moment you stop trying to sound interesting and start being interested, you step into a completely different level of attraction. Not physical attraction, but soulful resonance. Because everyone is hungry for one thing in relationships: to be understood. Psychology shows that being truly seen fulfills one of our deepest human needs: significance. And here's the paradox. When you give someone that gift, they subconsciously associate those warm emotions with you. It's not manipulation, it's resonance. You make them feel connected, and their mind begins to associate you with safety and peace. That's why some people just feel good to be around. Their energy tells your nervous system, you can relax here. Now, how do you cultivate this kind of attractive presence? Start small. Try this the next time someone shares something with you. Instead of thinking about what to say next, repeat back what they said. Not word for word, but the emotion behind it. If your friend says, "I've been so tired lately," you might reply, "It sounds like you've been carrying a lot lately." That simple reflection tells their subconscious, "You get me." And that moment of emotional mirroring builds a bridge far stronger than any witty reply ever could. Here's another practice, one that ancient mindfulness teaches and modern psychology confirms. Before you enter a conversation, take one deep breath and silently remind yourself, "I'm here to understand, not to respond." That pause grounds your energy, quiets your ego, and transforms the way people feel in your presence. You stop being noise in the room and start being calm in the chaos. When you listen like that, with your whole self, people feel it. They can't always explain it, but they remember it. They might forget your words, but they'll remember the peace they felt around you. Because your calmness gives them permission to be authentic. And authenticity is the most beautiful kind of connection we can experience. I remember once meeting someone who spoke very little, but had this serene way of paying attention. Whenever you talked, they looked right at you, not through you. You'd walk away feeling lighter, even if they hardly said a word. That's the quiet power of an attractive mind. It doesn't demand attention, it earns it through presence. So maybe you've been told you're too quiet or too sensitive. Maybe you've felt invisible in loud rooms or overshadowed by people who seem more confident. But here's something I want you to remember. Your ability to listen deeply, to see others clearly, is a form of emotional intelligence the world desperately needs. It's not weakness. It's wisdom. It's not passive. It's powerful. Because when people feel understood by you, they don't forget it. And here's the truth that will always stand the test of time. People are not drawn to perfection. They're drawn to presence. Looks fade, words blur, but presence stays. You don't need to say the right thing to make someone feel valued. You just need to be fully there. That's what an attractive brain does. It holds space for others, and in doing so, it becomes magnetic without effort. So the next time you're in a conversation, practice the art of listening. Not to reply, but to connect. Notice what happens. Notice how people soften. Notice how the energy in the room shifts. Because when you make others feel seen, you awaken something timeless within them. The desire to feel human, to feel enough, to feel loved. And when your mind becomes a place where others feel understood, you won't have to chase attraction anymore. You'll embody it. Real beauty doesn't come from being noticed. It comes from making others feel noticed. Have you ever noticed how silence can say more than words ever could? Think about the last argument you had. That moment when you wanted to reply instantly, defend yourself, or fire back with the perfect response. But imagine if, instead of reacting, you just paused. One deep breath, 1 minute of silence. What would that moment have changed? Most people think power comes from having the last word, but in truth, real power is in knowing when words are no longer needed. Silence is not emptiness. It's presence. It's the space where wisdom lives. In a world that constantly pressures us to respond, explain, and perform, silence becomes a quiet rebellion. It says, I don't need to prove my peace to anyone. Psychology tells us that emotionally mature people show what's called response inhibition. The ability to hold space between stimulus and reaction. That small gap, that fraction of a second where you choose silence instead of impulse, is the birthplace of emotional intelligence. It's where self-control transforms into quiet confidence. People with attractive minds understand this deeply. They know that silence doesn't mean weakness, it means understanding the weight of words. Every time you pause before replying, especially in emotionally charged situations, you're training your brain's prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision-making, empathy, and restraint. You're literally rewiring your mind for peace. And here's the beautiful paradox: the quieter your response, the louder your presence becomes. People sense calm as authority. They sense restraint as strength. Ancient wisdom has always known this truth. There's a line from the Tao Te Ching that says, "Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know." It's not saying that wise people never talk. It's saying they understand when not to. Silence becomes their teacher, not their punishment. The same principle appears in nearly every spiritual philosophy, that serenity isn't found in noise, but in stillness. You can practice this in your own life in simple ways. The next time you receive a heated text or an emotionally charged message, practice 1 minute of silence before replying. Don't type, don't reread. Just breathe. Let the emotion move through you before you move through your words. You'll be surprised how often your perspective shifts in that 1 minute. What once felt like an attack now feels like an opportunity to respond with grace. That's not suppression. That's mastery. Another beautiful way to cultivate this skill is through what I call the silent presence challenge. Sit with someone you love, a partner, a friend, a family member, for 5 minutes without speaking. No distractions, no phones, no need to fill the air. Just exist together. Notice how uncomfortable it might feel at first, how the urge to talk rises. Then notice what happens when that urge fades. You start feeling connected without words. You start realizing that silence isn't the absence of communication, it's the deepest form of it. People are drawn to those who can be silent without tension. It's because silence in others makes our own nervous system feel safe. We subconsciously sense their grounded energy, their lack of reactivity. You see, when your mind is calm, it regulates the emotional temperature of the entire room. That's what emotional control does. It radiates stability. And stability is deeply, irresistibly attractive. The more you practice this, The more you begin to notice that silence gives you something words rarely can. Clarity. You start hearing your thoughts before they turn into reactions. You notice what's worth responding to and what simply deserves your peace. In relationships, this transforms everything. Instead of escalating conflict, you anchor it. Instead of competing for dominance, you create space for understanding. People will feel that difference. They might not be able to explain why, but they'll describe you as grounded, wise, magnetic. Because silence is not about muting yourself. It's about mastering yourself. It's about realizing that your peace is too valuable to be traded for temporary validation. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you are choosing strength over chaos. You are choosing depth over drama. So the next time your emotions start rising and you feel that familiar urge to respond fast, don't. Take that 1 minute. Let silence do the talking. Let calmness become your message. Because the truth is, silence doesn't mean you've lost the argument. It means you've won yourself. Real confidence doesn't need to shout. It's the quiet within you that speaks the loudest. Have you ever reached that point in an argument where you suddenly realize winning isn't worth the cost? You know that moment. The tension is high, your heart is racing, your mind is crafting the perfect comeback, and then something inside whispers, let it go. That whisper isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the moment your mind shifts from craving victory to choosing peace. That's not the end of growth. It's the beginning of it. We've been conditioned to believe that standing our ground means proving we're right. But the most attractive minds have learned something far deeper. Peace is louder than chaos when your mind matures. Growth doesn't always look like climbing higher. Sometimes it looks like stepping back. It's not about silence or surrender. It's about self-control, about valuing your energy over your ego. Let me share a moment that perfectly captures this. A friend of mine once told me about a heated argument she had with her partner. Voices were rising, emotions spilling over. She said she could feel herself wanting to shout, to prove her point, to win. But something shifted. In the middle of it, she paused and quietly said, "Let's not do this right now." And she walked away. Hours later, when they finally talked calmly, everything was different. Softer, clearer, more human. She told me was the first time she understood what strength actually feels like. It wasn't dominance. It was discipline. That story stays with me because it's a perfect example of what psychology calls emotional regulation. It's the ability to stay connected to your values even when your emotions want to disconnect you from them. It's not suppression, it's transformation. When you choose growth over drama, you're retraining your brain to respond instead of react. You're saying, my peace matters more than my pride. And that choice, repeated over time, rewires your nervous system for balance. But this mindset doesn't appear overnight. It's something we build through small, consistent practices. One simple exercise is to reflect after every conflict. Instead of replaying what they said or what you could have said, write down one lesson instead of one complaint. It could be something like, I learned I need more space before I respond. Or, I realized I take criticism personally when I'm tired. Each reflection turns pain into wisdom. That's how your mind evolves. It learns to harvest growth from chaos instead of getting trapped in it. Another powerful shift happens in language. Notice how your energy changes when you say, let's pause, instead of, you're wrong. The first phrase invites connection, the second fuels conflict. Words are energetic choices, and every one of them either builds a bridge or burns it. The most attractive brains instinctively choose words that build, because they've learned that protecting their peace is not selfish. It's sacred. And yes, sometimes walking away feels uncomfortable. Sometimes you'll feel misunderstood or even judged. But that's okay, because growth doesn't need applause. It just needs awareness. Every time you choose peace, you're teaching your nervous system that calm is safe. You're expanding your emotional capacity, your patience, your empathy. That inner stillness becomes visible to others. It radiates. That's the kind of energy that draws people toward you. Not because you're loud or dramatic, but because you're centered. Because in a world addicted to reaction, your restraint feels like oxygen. Modern psychology confirms what ancient teachings have said for centuries. The mind that can stay still in a storm has already mastered itself. Every argument you walk away from with grace, every conflict you diffuse with calm, every time you prioritize understanding over being right, you're not losing anything. You're evolving. You're showing that your peace has become your priority. And that's where your true power begins. So the next time you feel the pull to prove a point, pause. Ask yourself, what's the cost of being right if I lose my peace? Remember, the goal isn't to win arguments. It's to win balance, clarity, and connection. When you start finding beauty in growth instead of drama, life begins to open in ways noise never could. Because the truth is simple. Peace doesn't chase attention. It creates it. And when your mind becomes peaceful, people don't just hear you, they feel you. Growth is not how loudly you can speak your truth. It's how calmly you can live it. Have you ever noticed how uncomfortable silence feels when you're alone? That moment when the noise fades, your phone screen dims, and suddenly it's just you, your thoughts, your breath, your emotions. For many people, that's when loneliness creeps in. But here's a truth most of us forget: being alone and feeling lonely are not the same thing. Loneliness is the absence of connection. Solitude is the presence of yourself. And learning to love your own company is one of the most magnetic, powerful signs of an attractive mind. In psychology, there's a term called self-regulation. It's the ability to soothe your own nervous system without depending on external validation. People who master this become emotionally self-sufficient. They don't cling. They don't chase. They connect from wholeness, not from hunger. That's what makes solitude so powerful. It teaches you to draw energy from within instead of constantly reaching outward. Think about it. Most of us fill our days with distractions, endless scrolling, constant social plans, background noise, anything to avoid sitting with ourselves. But when you begin to replace those moments of avoidance with mindful solitude, something begins to shift. You start realizing that peace doesn't come from being surrounded by people. It comes from being grounded in yourself. I like to think of it as the solo coffee ritual. Just 15 minutes alone, no phone, no playlist, no multitasking. Sit somewhere quiet, maybe by a window, maybe outside, and simply reflect on one thing you're proud of today. It could be small, like how you handled a tough conversation or how you got out of bed despite not feeling your best. That's it. That simple ritual begins to rewire your relationship with solitude. You stop seeing it as isolation and start seeing it as intimacy. A moment where you meet yourself without judgment. Ancient wisdom has always honored solitude as sacred. Monks, poets, philosophers, they all understood that silence is where the mind resets and the soul speaks. Modern science agrees. Studies show that intentional alone time reduces cortisol, sharpens focus, and increases emotional resilience. When you spend time alone, your brain's default mode network, the system that handles self-awareness, becomes more active. In simpler terms, you begin to know yourself. And once you know yourself, you no longer fear being by yourself. But here's something important. Solitude should heal, not hurt. If the quiet ever feels heavy, if the silence turns into sadness instead of serenity, that's okay too. It's a sign that your inner world is asking for support, not isolation, and reaching out for help through therapy, a trusted friend, or even a community doesn't make you weak. It deepens your awareness. Healing isn't about doing everything alone. It's about knowing when to walk with others and when to sit quietly with yourself. Start reframing your language around being alone. Instead of saying, I feel lonely, try saying, I'm recharging. Words shape energy. When you label solitude as nourishment, your mind begins to believe it. You'll notice how your energy feels calmer, how your creativity sparks again, how your self-esteem grows in the silence. You begin to attract relationships not out of need, but out of abundance. The most attractive minds don't fear being alone. They use it. They turn solitude into a sanctuary, a space to reset, realign, and reconnect. That kind of self-anchoring energy draws others naturally. Because there's something irresistibly magnetic about people who are comfortable in their own company. They don't demand attention, they inspire it. So the next time you find yourself alone, don't rush to fill the space. Sit with it. Sip your coffee slowly. Listen to your own thoughts without trying to escape them. Because the relationship you build with yourself becomes the foundation for every other connection in your life. Remember, solitude isn't the absence of love. It's where love begins. When you no longer need the world to complete you, that's when the world starts to be drawn to you. Have you ever met someone who doesn't react instantly, who stays calm even when everyone else is losing their composure? There's something magnetic about that kind of presence. They don't rush to defend, they don't fire back. They don't let their emotions drive the conversation. They pause, think, and respond with clarity. That pause, that brief, conscious stillness, is what makes them so powerful. Reflection is the quiet form of power people can feel even before you speak. We often think strength means being quick, sharp, and ready with a comeback. But real strength lives in the pause between emotion and action. That space, even if it's just 3 breaths long, determines whether you'll respond from wisdom or from impulse. Psychology calls this the difference between your amygdala and your prefrontal cortex. The amygdala reacts. It's the part of your brain that floods you with anger, fear, or defensiveness. But the prefrontal cortex reflects. It's the part that governs logic, empathy, and foresight. The more you learn to activate reflection instead of reaction, the more emotionally intelligent, and therefore attractive, your mind becomes. Think of it like this: every reaction is borrowed energy. It's triggered by what someone else said or did. But every reflection is owned energy. It's you deciding, here I choose how I show up. No matter how they act, that kind of emotional control doesn't just make you calm. It makes you magnetic. Because people subconsciously trust those who don't lose themselves under pressure. Your stillness becomes their anchor. One simple way to start building this power is to count 3 deep breaths before replying to anything emotionally charged. A text, a comment, a confrontation. Those 3 breaths aren't wasted time, they're recalibration. You're literally giving your brain enough oxygen and space to move activity from the reactive amygdala to the reflective prefrontal cortex. In that short moment, you go from reacting like your past self to responding as your higher self. Another powerful practice is reflection through journaling. At the end of each day, write down one moment you handled calmly. It could be something small, not replying to a rude message, choosing patience with a coworker, or staying silent when you wanted to prove a point. When you acknowledge those moments, you train your brain to associate calmness with strength. You build what psychologists call self-trust. And the more you trust yourself to stay grounded, the less power anyone has to pull you out of your peace. Ancient philosophy mirrors this beautifully. The Stoics used to say, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." They believed that every reaction is an opportunity to prove mastery, not over others, but over the self. When you reflect before reacting, you stop being controlled by emotion and start being guided by awareness. That shift is what turns an ordinary mind into an attractive one, because reflection radiates maturity. Notice how you feel after you've reacted impulsively. There's usually regret, tension, or that sinking sense that you gave your power away. But when you pause, even for a few seconds, you create space for wisdom to enter. That space is sacred. It's where peace lives. It's where you remember who you are before emotion tries to tell you otherwise. The truth is, if people can feel your energy before they understand your words, if you lead with reflection, they'll feel safety. If you lead with reaction, they'll feel chaos. One draws others in, the other pushes them away. The difference isn't in what you say, it's in how you pause before you say it. So the next time you feel triggered, take those 3 breaths. Let silence carry your awareness forward. And at the end of the day, acknowledge every calm moment as a victory. Because it is. You're not just managing emotions, you're mastering energy. And that mastery becomes the silent confidence that people can sense the moment you walk into a room. Remember, reaction is the voice of ego. Reflection is the language of wisdom. The more you reflect before you respond, the more peace you create. And peace is the most powerful attraction of all. Take a moment and breathe. You've just walked through 7 signs of having an attractive brain. And maybe, somewhere between these moments of reflection, you saw yourself in them. Maybe not fully, but in glimpses. In how you've grown, how you pause before reacting, how you've learned to love in quieter, deeper ways. That's the thing about inner beauty. It doesn't arrive all at once. It's revealed layer by layer as you evolve, heal, and begin to see yourself not through judgment, but through awareness. An attractive mind isn't about how much you know. It's about how much peace you bring. It's not built from attention, but from intention. The most magnetic people aren't those who speak the loudest. They're the ones whose energy whispers calm, curiosity, and kindness in every space they enter. Think about that. Calm, curiosity, and kindness. Calm because they've learned that chaos doesn't need a reaction. Curiosity because they've chosen to understand rather than assume. Kindness because they know everyone is carrying something unseen. When your mind lives in those 3 qualities, it becomes impossible for it not to attract light. If you've ever wondered whether your growth is visible, it is. It's visible in the way you hold yourself differently when life tests you. It's visible in the softness of your voice when you choose understanding over anger. It's visible in your silence, in your gratitude, in your refusal to let the world make you bitter. That's the quiet confidence of an evolved mind. And it's more powerful than any physical feature or external achievement. Because beauty fades, but the peace you radiate stays long after words are forgotten. Now, I want to hear from you. Out of the 7 signs we've explored, which one do you feel most connected to? Or which one do you want to grow next? Maybe it's learning to reflect before you react. Maybe it's finding peace in solitude. Maybe it's leading with quiet influence. Whatever it is, drop it in the comments below. Because the act of naming your next step is the first sign of your next transformation. Remember, growth doesn't happen by accident. It happens by awareness. Every small decision you make, every moment you pause before responding, every time you choose gratitude over ego, reflection over reaction, peace over performance, you are sculpting an attractive brain. One that doesn't seek to impress, but to impact. One that doesn't chase love, but becomes love itself. Ancient wisdom teaches that the mind is both the seed and the soil. What you plant through your thoughts, your words, your intentions. That's what your life grows into. So tend to your mind with compassion. Feed it stillness. Water it with learning. Expose it to the light of gratitude. Because the more beautiful your inner world becomes, the more beauty you'll recognize in the outer one. Your mind is your mirror. The clearer it gets, the more beauty it reflects. So keep polishing it. Keep questioning. Keep forgiving. Keep growing. Because when your thoughts become gentle, your presence becomes powerful. And when your heart aligns with your awareness, you won't need to convince anyone of your worth. They'll simply feel it. So take these signs with you. Not as a checklist, but as a compass. A reminder that your greatest attraction isn't in how you look, but in how you think, how you feel, and how you make others feel in your presence. Let your growth be your glow. Let your calm be your charisma. Let your kindness be your signature. Because when your mind shines, everything else follows. And if there's one truth to carry with you beyond this moment, it's this. The most attractive people aren't chasing beauty. They're becoming peace.